excited to be here. We're excited to partner with you, and we're excited to listen to this conversation. So thank you, Dave, for putting me on the spot again. But thank you.
My hope is that you all have had conversations about PEP and PrEP, and that everybody's on it, and that you're not paying for it, that you're using the Gilead copay card.
Amen.
Amen. Giving them additional money. So what we're going to do is have a conversation. Everybody say conversation.
Conversation.
Right. In this space, Bishop Allen invited us to really talk about how it is that we can do a better job of discussing the importance of building bridges, in particular, increasing conversations about intersections around those of us who are Black, LGBTQ, IU, saying gender loving, acknowledging that gay is a white political identifier. Especially now, right, that we are celebrating Pride Month, which for me is an extension of Black History Month, which is incredibly vexing given that we have lost 6 Black trans women just this month alone. I pause now every time I say the number because I expect for somebody to tell me that I'm missing one, right? It's 12 this month or this year? So 12 this year, right, but just 6 this month, which I think is even, it's beyond insane, but just a contradiction of it being Pride Month, right? And I live in New York, and in 2 weeks there'll be World Pride Day there. And I doubt that there'll be anybody on that main stage talking about that, right? We were here last week to go to Huntsville, Alabama, to have a press conference for Nigel Shelby's family from Huntsville. Lord, let's pray on this baby. Around Nigel Shelby, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we just need to do a better job of ensuring that more people link arms and aim so that all of us can at some point really celebrate publicly what it means to be Black and proud of our intersectional identities. So I have 3 framing questions for Towanda that are really designed to provide a platform that we can then build from. And again, what are we gonna have? Yes, this part of the room is active. We're gonna invite y'all in, right? Not at all, right? Y'all get some of the coffee. So the first question, for those who don't know, right, the National Black Justice Coalition is the nation's only civil rights organization at the intersections of racial equity and LGBTQ and same-gender loving equality. So we spend a lot of time in traditionally Black spaces, churches, HBCUs, legacy organizations like the NAACP, National Urban League, and the like, are really talking about the reality that we exist, and that sometimes the absence of acknowledging that facilitates additional oppression, and then doing the same thing in white spaces, right? Telling white queer people that they are often the problem, right? And Towanda has been an ally. We met a number of years ago in DC, and she was leveraging her time, her talent, and her treasures to really increase the visibility of communities, not only Black people, Black mothers and families, and the like. So the first question I have for you is, what's the one thing you know or have learned about the experiences of Black LGBTQ SGL people that you wish more traditional members of the Black church knew or appreciated?
Well, I don't know if everyone knows, but I'm a PK. We were brought up in the church. And when we were younger, my parents did a tremendous job with not stereotyping or judging anyone. A lot of times when my father preached, he never preached about gender, he never preached about or taught about race, he never taught us about any of that. So we didn't know about the LGBTQ community. I mean, of course, back then it wasn't called the LGBTQ community, but we didn't know anything about it until we got a little older. And society and public was like, okay, that person, you know that person is gay. And we were like, what? So we had no idea. We didn't even know what it was, really. You know what I mean? We just knew that people just loved people. We didn't look at anything else other than we're all human, especially when we were younger. And then unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately, because it became judgments. When we started going to other churches and we hearing whispers, and we were never taught that. So I think that right now in the traditional churches, I think that they have fear, a lot of fear, because they just don't understand. They don't understand that it's just all love.
Yeah. Y'all could clap and affirm for that. So I was also a comedian, if you care to. So I mentioned his name earlier. Nigel Shelby, for those who don't know, 15 years old, Huntsville, Alabama. I remind people often that unlike white people who get to come out and draw strength from that, most black LGBTQ people live with other black people. We live in the South, we live in states where it's still legal to discriminate against us. And Alabama is, of course, one of those spaces. And he had a mother and a father figure and family that loved him and really affirmed him in all of the ways that he showed up in the world. His Aunt Keita owns a hair salon in Huntsville and said that they taught him his colors because he loved Beyonce. So they just picked different outfits and wigs from over the course of her career, and that's how they taught him colors, right? So this acknowledgement that this little boy was perfect in the way that he was formed, but he went to school in Alabama where he was bullied for not only being black, but for being gay. We could probably have a whole nother summit about how fascinated we are with sexual identity, gender orientation, and gender expression, that we expect 14-year-old boys to know who they are and stand in that. But suffice it to say that he found school to be a terrorizing place, that he died by suicide. Right around the time that we learned about Nigel's death, the Congressional Black Caucus launched an emergency task force around black youth mental health and suicide, in part because over the last 20 years, there's been an increase in suicidal ideation and completion amongst youth, specifically amongst black youth. And then while we don't have as much data, we know that black LGBTQ SGO youth, those who are or who are perceived to be, have increased as well. And so for those who don't know, Towanda's mother, Towanda Braxton, 2 babies. She's the only one of the Braxton family that had girls.
I'm the only girl to have a girl in my family. My brother was the only one who had girls. Unfortunately, my niece passed away over a month ago, but he was the only one, and now I feel so blessed and honored to have a girl. And I already know where you're going with this because you're part of my family, so you know what I've been going through with both of my children. My daughter, Brooke, she's very eclectic, and she dresses like, what's the new game that everybody's playing and she's spending all my money on? Fortnite. So she dresses like they do on Fortnite, like big sweatshirts, little pants, and she wears glasses. So her esteem has always been a little low. And it became a little lower when I got an amazing divorce. Hallelujah. Amen.
Yes, Brenda.
I'm happily divorced. So at home she was going through a lot of withdrawals, and I kind of noticed a lot of things that she was going through. I pay attention to my children, even though I'm not home all the time. I'm very in tune with my kids. I talk to them all the time. I probably get on their nerves. So she was going through a lot in school. She was being bullied for a long time. She started cutting herself. She said that she wanted to commit suicide. She wished that she wasn't here anymore. And I don't know if you know anything about me and my family, but we are very loving family. I mean, we may fuss, we may argue with each other, but when it comes to the children, we are definitely a strong village. So I reached out to different resources, and I believe in counseling.
Yeah. Amen.
Yes,
To me, that's going to the doctor for your emotions. That's going to the doctor for your brain. Just like you go to the doctor for your physical ailments, your brain, your emotions, your heart, your feelings, all of that is a part of you too. So that has to be healed too. You have to get it out. And sometimes when you want to get it out, you can't get it. You can't talk like freely sometimes to your parents or to your family because I guess you're in fear of being judged, or you're in fear of the family talking, because we do talk to each other a lot. So, sometimes you have to feel safe. And I think that we as a community and we as a family, for me and myself, and I'm raising my hand, we have to do a better job of not making that person feel like they're being judged, right? So now she's going through a situation. She's so much better, y'all. She's so much better. Like I said, she goes through counseling. She talks to her counselor. She doesn't really talk to her dad because he was a source of a toxic situation for her. They used to argue. I'm telling all my business. But it's okay because we're family. And this is healing. This is healing for me too. So, she doesn't really talk to her dad anymore so much because she realized that was a toxic situation. She's 12 years old, but she's very aware of her emotions, which is amazing to me now. And she knows now, she's like, okay, mommy, I thought about cutting myself, But I have to be honest, I only wanted to cut myself for attention. So now she's just talking about the reasons why she's doing certain things. So now she has a group of friends, and right now, some of her friends are like, they're bisexual. So Brooke was like, okay, you're bisexual, that's fine, you're still my friend, because again, I teach my children, no judgments. So now she's in a place where her friend is telling her, oh my God, Brooke, I'm in love with you. I'm so in love with you, Brooke. Let's go on vacations together. Let's get our parents together so we can all be together. And I was faced with, okay, how do I handle that? And I told Brooke, I said, Brooke, it's okay for her you're a beautiful young lady. Regardless on the gender, they're going to love you anyway.
That part.
And it's all about your preference. It's just about your preference, honey. If that's what you want to do, cool. I'm still going to love you anyway because you're still going to be my princess. And if you don't, cool. I'm still going to love you anyway because you're still going to be my princess. And I think a lot of parents are in fear of having that conversation with their children because they're like, oh my God, they may like the same sex. Oh my God, I may not have any grandchildren. You can still have grandkids. I can still have grandkids. I'm not going to. It's going to be a minute for me, but unless Braxton keeps going the way he's going hot there.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Jesus. I'm sitting there with my 25 there, just look what's over the thing, and she wanted to do
Yes, but we still in church. So what? Okay, yes you can. Yes you can.
But I'm saying that to say that it's so important for us to talk to our children. And this is just leading into another situation that I just feel, I'm me and my sister Trina and my new man who's amazing. Oh my God, I'm just.
I told y'all she was a Tell people the story.
So this is what's happening, right? So we felt that it was just like a few years ago, Trina and I, we had a casting call for the LGBTQ community for couples, right? So now we're like, okay, yeah, we did that for the couples, but we want to do something for people to tell their story. There are so many people who hadn't been able to tell their story. And a lot of times when I put it out, they were like, what you mean by telling your story? Because getting it all out and actually saying it out loud to someone else other than someone that's so tight to you, and then you're like, okay, they got to keep my secret. It don't have to be a secret. It does not have to be a secret. It doesn't. So when we did this casting call, honest God, when we did this casting call, this guy came up. He was real tall, very cute. And I was like, oh, hi. And he said, Towanda, okay, I'm going to sit here and whatever. He trusted me because he never really talked about anything in his life. He was very shy. He actually worked at Bar Chicks, Trina's Bar. That was a plug. So he sat there and he said, I said, well, I need you to tell me your story. And he was like, okay, what do you mean? I said, tell me your story. Tell me about you. Tell me how you got to where you are right now. So he told me the story about how, he wanted to tell his parents that, he was in love with the man and he couldn't tell his parents, but then his uncle molested him, made him, perform oral sex on him all the time. And he said it went for about 3 years. And he said, I never wanted to tell anybody because I felt ashamed. And that made me sad because I look at my children and I put myself in that place as a parent is, I don't want my children to ever feel they can't come to me about stuff like that. And the fact that he was protecting that individual and felt that that individual was the victim and not him. And he said, Towanda, I just feel really bad because he was able to move on with his life. He's married, he has children, and here I am, look at me. I said, well, look at you. Look how brave you are that you're able to sit here in this chair to tell me your story. That was just so amazing to me. That we as a community, we still have some type of shame about who we are. I'm saying we because there's some times that I don't want to sit there and tell about my story just like just now. I never told that story about my daughter. But we cannot sit in shame because you never know what that next person is going through. They could be depressed, going through depression, and always check on our strong friends. The one with the smile on their face. That would be, I'm raising my hand. Because that would be me. You know? And I just want everybody to know that it's okay to tell y'all story. And we're going to have another casting situation in September because I just think it's important for the world to know that it's okay for people to tell their stories. And you can't be fearful to hear the stories. I think that's another thing. A lot of people are afraid to tell their stories because they don't want to be judged. And then there was another individual, I'm sorry, I'm taking over. There was another individual who was telling me their story, and they were like, well, the person who molested me, he died. And I didn't get a chance to say anything to him. I said, let's go to his grave. Closure. And that is so important. That is so important. And then I told the gentleman that I was speaking of earlier, he said, you know, I never told anybody. I said, well, why don't you confront them now? Stop protecting these individuals. Stop. Because if you're protecting him, who's protecting you?
So let's do this. I know that in the audience, I promise y'all we'll have a conversation. I want to tap y'all in. But I want to highlight 3 things that I heard you say. One is echoing what my mother used to say, which is that secrets destroy families, and sometimes they also destroy people, right? And acknowledging that so much of what gets in the way is fear.
Yes.
And acknowledging that we need to shift to a place where people feel and know love.
Right.
But I don't want to pretend that this is easy, right?
No, it's not. No.
Sitting in a space like this, talking to new friends, disclosing the pieces of us that are most intimate, and that are most difficult to disclose and discuss is challenging. It's why people struggle with having these kinds of conversations or inviting partners to talk about forms of protection. So the question is, like, how does one get over it, or get to a place where you can show up like this and speak your truth regardless of, or in spite of the fear?
Well, you know what I feel? I feel like, just like everything else in life, like everybody has a favorite song, right? And before you like that song, for me, there was a song that I hated, but the radio station kept playing it over and over and over and over again to make you love that song. And then after a while, like, that's my jam. That's my jam. To me, it's the same thing with this. The more you do, the more it's accepted, and everybody else will feel comfortable doing it.
I got it. All right, that just means we got to continue to sow into this so it continues, right? Let's open this up. Are there questions in the audience? Remember, a question begins with the preposition who, what, where, when, why, how. Y'all sound great. It's okay.
No, y'all have no questions.
Y'all lying. No, we have no questions.
Nobody have a question?
Over here.
When you found out,
Hold on.
Wait for the mic. Stand up.
Come on, bro. Come on.
when you found out about your daughter, how did you handle that situation?
Which part, with the cutting or the cutting? Well, it made me sad that she was cutting and that she didn't feel comfortable to come and tell me what her issues, or I don't want to use the word issues, that's the wrong word, what her concerns were about her life. But what I didn't do, I didn't make her feel bad about the fact that she was cutting. You know, I kind of uplifted her like, okay, honey, you see this right here? I know this scar right here is reminding you of a moment in your life, but you don't need that memory. That's a bad memory. Let's talk about the good memories that you have. So every day I make her say 5 affirmations that are good in her life. 5. So if she says something bad like, Mom, nobody likes me, I said, so then give me 5 things that you like about you.
Practical, right? That's incredibly important because it's easy for us to hold on to that one thing somebody said or did versus all of the lessons that we know exist.
Hey, Towanda.
Hi.
So rejection is really big in the gay community or the LGBT community, as far as when we come out. And for some of us, we actually don't come out, we kind of put out, right? And so what I found was whenever I was put out, my mother had gay friends who were very close to her, but when I came out, it was a major problem. Have you experienced that in your family? I know you said your family was very loving.
Yes.
but have you experienced that in your family or with someone else that was close to you to where they had gay friends, but when their child tried to tell them about their sexuality, it was a major problem? And if so, how did you handle that person? What did you say to them to kind of comfort them?
Beautiful question. Again, I think everything is about support. And did you ever have a conversation with your mother lately, or are you talking to your mother now, or how's that working?
My mother and I, we tried to have that conversation, but
Okay, so when you use the word tried, that means you failed at something.
Yeah, and unfortunately, she
wait a minute,
passed away.
I need you to hear what I just said. When you use the word try, that means you failed at something. So what do you feel that you failed at?
I don't feel there was a failure on my part. My mother was very close-minded from being a part of the church. I was raised in the church, you understand?
Okay.
So I came up as, she always called me Reverend Green from the time I was like 6 years old. So
Okay.
I was preaching from the time I was 6,
Okay.
And so there was not necessarily a failure on my part, but she felt as though loving me or accepting me would cause her to go to hell.
Oh, she tried to inflict her guilt.
Right,
I'm
and
sorry.
so, and unfortunately, like, I can't have that real candid conversation with her at this point because 7 months ago she passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
I'm
so.
sorry. For me, I just embrace everybody. Unless, you try to hurt or harm me or my family. I embrace everybody. And for me, I'm actually a friend of mine. Her daughter was put, I know that was a little shit. Her daughter was just put out of her house because she just found out that she was a part of the LGBTQ community. And me as her friend, I had to tell her, listen, Michelle, that is your blood. You have to sit down and have a conversation with your daughter. She was like, well, coming up with excuses. That's what most parents do. Well, Towanda, that's not how I raised her. That's this and this. And she's a white woman. Towanda, that's not how I raised her. She looked through her stuff, and that's how she found out, being nosy. I said, but Michelle, I said, that's your fault for looking through her stuff. Right. You should have waited for her to come to you. That's unfair. A person has to be ready when they're ready. Yeah. Don't you force her or push her out like that. Don't you do that. So as a friend, that's what I do to my friend. I'm extremely honest with them about that type of situation because it's unfair. And because now look at your situation that you're not even able to have that direct conversation physically with your mother, but you can still have a conversation with her. Write her a letter. I'm serious. That's just therapy. Write her a letter, for real. Gotta get it off of you.
And I want to highlight too that this is how people shift from being an ally, right, feeling good because they contributed to a gala, or they have an HRC bumper sticker, or they watch Will and Grace, to being an accomplice, right? Because y'all know a lot of people feel real good, they get their rainbow stuff out, they're like, can we go to the parties? But actually, are they doing things to shift and provide space for people? Is the question. I also want to offer words matter. I'm in a PhD program to use white people's language against them. And the term coming out is like nails on the chalkboard to me. For two reasons, and I'm saying this because I want to invite everybody to not use that term. One, it makes heterosexual privilege invisible. And really exposes how entitled straight people feel to information that they don't have to disclose, right? So the idea, in essence, is that coming out acknowledges that there's some point where somebody has some kind of an attraction, and for strictly heterosexual people, which is a small percentage of the population, it's opposite sex attraction. For most people, it is varying types of attraction. But heterosexual people are never asked, when did you come out?
I came out when I was...
See? Right? They're not asked that. But what heterosexual people do,
right,
much like some members of the black churches, they stand with their arms folded and say, when did you realize that you were queer? And when did you start telling people? And my thing is, unless you're interested in me, romantically or otherwise, you don't need access to this information. And here's the other part about it, right? Is it shifts the responsibility. Too often, as people are waiting, say, oh, I knew I was waiting for you to tell me. My thing is, have you done the work so that I feel comfortable enough inviting you in. And in particular, right, this is where we do a lot of work with Gilead around having conversations about sexual health and wellness and HIV and whether or not you like to use protection, just because we need to talk about it. And for me, everybody has something that they don't necessarily want to talk about. Because of stigma, shame, the collusion of those two things. It could be mental health in our families, it could be credit score, it could be status, whatever. But too often, we don't remind people that you got to do the work so that people want to share information with you. Right? And so if we move away from coming out, which again is white people stuff, they get to come out, they get to go to neighborhoods, they get to join rugby leagues and draw strength from that. In our communities, it's really about, do people do the work? Do you Google the acronym? Do you understand the oppression that we are at the lowest rungs of quality of life indicator ladders, that we erase Black trans men, that we don't talk about the pressure that Black trans women face, GNC people don't really show up, asexual people, I don't know what that is, right? It's shifting the responsibility. So just want to honor that words matter. Yes. Well, only, I want to, let me check though. Is there anybody for whom hearing is a challenge? We should not assume that everybody's able-bodied, and microphones usually just help in that regard. If not, then.
We'll get the young lady in the black and white striped shirt next.
Okay. That is a cute skirt.
Good morning, how are you all? So for me, I know when I grew up and I started identifying as a trans woman, or even a gay male in the beginning, my mom had her struggles of accepting me. But also, before I started identifying as gay and trans, I was sexually abused. And so, okay, so my mother, I feel like for so many years she never healed. And she didn't take care of herself because she didn't know how to deal with the life that I was leading and going into. So my question for you is how did you take care of yourself when your daughter started cutting herself?
Myself? Oh, that's
It would be a Black woman too to ask a question about how are you serving yourself in your soul. I just want to honor that.
She only asked because she has a very cute skirt on. With a lot of prayer, and then my man who's amazing. No, your support system is so important. And then David, he's like a brother to me, for real. And I was able to bounce off a lot of things with David, I just think that your support system is really important. And then counseling, because a lot of times as a parent, you kind of blame yourself a little bit. It's a little parent guilt of, oh my God, maybe I could have done this differently. Maybe I could have let their loser father a long time before this stuff happened. You know what I mean? Because I knew he was unhealthy in the situation, but as a Black woman, I didn't want to give up. I didn't want to let it go. But I was very disobedient. I was extremely disobedient because I'm telling y'all, God told me a long time ago to leave him and I didn't.
She said one over here, then we'll go ahead.
How you doing, Towanda? So a lot of us in the LGBT community, we live in fear. One of the reasons we live in fear because when it's time to come out and we tell our parents, I'm sure a lot of us have been through this, when we tell our parents, they disown us and they Bible shame us and they feel like they have done something wrong somewhere in raising us. So my question to you is for your daughter to, if she was to, be bisexual, gay, and come to you, how do you feel like that would affect you, or if it would in fact affect you at all, that you may have done something wrong in raising her?
Oh no, because I don't look at LGBTQ community as something wrong. That's first. And then secondly, they're all, I'm telling my business, Jesus, Lord forgive me. But there's an individual within the family who's one of the nieces and nephews that I know is, and it's fine because I know he is. You know what I mean? And and sometimes when it comes to that, they kind of gravitate a little bit, And I say, okay, you want to come down and you see Auntie Amber? Yes, and we're gonna have fun. I said, yes, we are. is what it's about. I'm never, ever gonna make anybody in my family, when I say family, I mean my immediate family or the family abroad, to feel some sort of way, because it's not like it's something wrong. It's nothing wrong. Something's wrong with me having big feet, but that don't make you not like me. You know what I mean? And I just think that it's important that conversations need to happen. So I want to ask you guys something, because this is something that I used to always ask individuals. They say, oh, it's wrong, the Bible says, and the Bible says. Well, the Bible says a lot of things. It talks about judge not lest ye be judged. So you judging, first of all, let's talk about that. Then second, show me where God said, the end. So when the parents say stuff like that, say, help me understand. That's the good thing to say. Help me understand. Help me understand.
Hi, good afternoon. So hearing you talk about your capacity to love and coming from a failed relationship and enduring being someone from a loving family, after your failed relationship with being divorced, how did you maintain your capacity to love in such a vibrant and bold way?
Hey, this is therapy for me. Oh my God. Look, I'm going to give everybody an invoice. It's on the side. I'm going to give it to my therapist. Like, listen, you ain't doing a good job. I'm right here. I'm getting therapy right here. Anyway, you know what? I'm a different type of girl. I had to understand that was that, and I was going to carry that with this that I have. That was his issues and concerns. And what I learned not to do was carry his baggage. I had to learn that what he had, his sickness and all those things that he was doing and experiencing, that was his thing. So I had to give it back to him. That's what happened.
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Okay.
Let's take these last two. One here, one here. Oh, there's 3. 1, 2, 3.
Hi, how you doing?
I like your hair.
Thank you. I'm from Los Angeles, everybody. Thank you for being here. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I moved with my auntie, and she has 2 kids, and they're younger. And I had to talk with her about, she didn't want me to like kind of say like girl and honey and like kind of like gay.
Are they boys?
1 boy, 1 girl.
Okay.
And they're very impressionable.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was kind of like telling me to dim my light, you know what I mean, around them, just because she didn't want them to like kind of revert to things I was saying. And part of me felt, you know, like, okay, I should be like this, but then part of me is like, why am I dimming my light? And then another part of it too is like seeing like kids at Pride. Like, how do you feel about that?
We're going to take all 3, then let her respond so we can stay on time. Yeah, we're in the second one. Yep.
Good afternoon. So Towanda, I heard you say that you went to counseling. What came from that? Like when you go into counseling, you unpacking with yourself, your daughter, and then combine. What came from that? As you know, the gentleman said, you're very vibrant, you're very loving. What did you get out of counseling specifically that you and your daughter could use those tools to continue that relationship in such a loving, vibrant way?
Okay, and then the last one right here.
Right here. Hi. So piggybacking off of that, I know you said that you. Thank you. I got you, bro. I know you said that you saw signs in the beginning that you should leave. My question is, I guess, how do you honor that gut feeling now, and what kind of boundaries has that allowed you to put up, and can you like assist someone who's going through the same thing?
Dimming your light. Don't dim your light, but have a conversation with your aunt. You have to have a conversation. How old are your niece and nephew? You said niece and nephew cousins.
They're like 10 and 3.
The 3-year-old is a boy or girl?
Boy.
Okay, do you play sports? You play basketball? How can you dim your light when you play basketball?
There you go. That's it.
Counseling tools.
Counseling and tools. What was the whole question?
What tools did you get that you could apply both in your life and in books like
Now, I don't know if you guys know, but in 2004, I was in a house with Iyanla. and it was called Starting Over. And this is going to be a two-part thing, so I'll be able to answer both at the same time. And what she did, I didn't understand it then, but she planted seeds. She told me in 2004 that he wasn't it.
Wow.
And she saw more in me. Yeah. She said, Towanda, you a leader. I mean, there was a lot that she said. But she said, first of all, Towanda, you a leader. And she recognized the fact that he was complacent in allowing me to be the man, the woman, the provider, the grandmother, the lover, sometimes like twice a year. You know, so she planted those seeds. She planted those seeds within me, and she told me, she was like, Towanda, do you understand what I'm saying? And then I did not, because I was just like, I was going to prove to everybody that I was going to make this work in the beginning, and then we didn't have no kids, and I was like, we're going to have kids because listen, let me tell you what happens with me. Let me tell you what my sister said. I ain't gonna tell you which one, but she's a little older. But my sister told me, you got to think about your offspring. And I always remember that as a kid. You got to think about your offspring. So I was like, oh, he cute, his family cute, I'm gonna have cute kids. And I did, I had cute kids. But then that's all I was supposed to do. And honest to God, I was sitting, I'm answering his question. Honest to God, I was sitting in the car one day. This is before I had my children. And I was sitting in the back, I had a rodeo back then. It was paid for, but I had a rodeo. And I was sitting in the back of the car, and we were going through so much because I was married to him, he wasn't married to me.
Come on.
Wow.
So, I was sitting in the back of the car. I didn't tell you this. It's amazing. I was sitting in the back of the car, and I was crying, and I was praying, and I kept praying, and God said, I got you. You just gotta be obedient. Walk in obedience, Towanda. Then he told me that, he said, you're gonna be blessed. I'm gonna bless you with a girl. Just you. I ain't believe it. Just you. I'm gonna bless you with a girl. And I said, and I remember I was still in doubt because, of course, as a human, we always sit in doubt like, is that really God talking to me? But then he started showing me different signs because I started praying, God, just reveal this to me. Just allow me to see this. And he allowed me to see this, and this, and I still stayed. Then, one day, I stopped living in fear. I had Braxton and I had Brooke. And there were some times that I would leave and I would come back. Leave and come back out of fear of the unknown. Leave and come back. And then I told myself one day, I said, self, you deserve much more than this. God didn't put you on this earth for you to suffer like this. This ain't how. And how are you able to tell or to show your children that this is a lifestyle that you're supposed to be living? This ain't good. They never see us hold hands. They never see us kiss, hug, we weren't even sleeping in the same bed, So I just stopped living in fear and I just started moving forward and I met Mr. Amazing, Wonderful.
So we'll have that conversation next year. I want to, yes it is. You can follow them online. It's like disgusting sick how much they love each other, but you deserve it.
Well, thank you. So did I answer your question now? Yes. Did I answer your question? Amazing.
So I want to honor, as we land this plane, the message of how important it is for each of us who are uniquely equipped with abilities to be empathetic, to see things and people for who they want to be, not often how they show up, and how incredibly important it is for us to remain connected to the source so that we can do that work. I appreciate the reminder of how suffocating fear can be if we allow it. And finally, the importance of community, right? Whether it's friends that you can text. Darwin and I are part of a group chat with 2 other Black men who are EDs in isolated positions. So having a village who can remind you that you're not crazy, you're perfect exactly as you are. And sometimes we need to love on the people who hurt us the most until they can love themselves. So join me in thanking Towanda for sharing this message. Definitely a conversation to be continued. I want to acknowledge Sandy for a lot of the work that they did. We will continue this partnership. And then lastly, as we welcome them to the stage, Bishop Allen for making this space and for allowing us to engage in this discussion.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Come on, y'all, give it up to David and Towanda. We love you. Come on, you can do better than that. You can do a whole lot better than that. Come on, y'all. That was amazing. Amazing. Transformative and healing for us all. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your love and your light with us this morning. I'm so blessed to have had the opportunity to experience that discussion and that conversation. Will you come back next year? Great. Oh my God. One more time. We'll be talking. We're going to take it to the next level next year. We're excited. Give yourselves a hand and the people around you. Oh, really?